This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome. You've heard and read the spin the media and the politicians have put on the issues of the day. To get the correct spin on what's going on in North Carolina, let's introduce you to our panel of experts. They include Connie Wilson, former legislator, lobbyist, and political analyst; Chris Fitzsimon from NC Policy Watch; John Hood from the John Locke Foundation; and Dan Blue III, political analyst and chair of the Wake County Democratic Party. And I'm Henry Hinton of Eastern North Carolina's Talk of the Town show. As you can see, Tom Campbell has the week off. But we've got an interesting show for you this week. We'll start by discussing new ways to fund roads, talk about the leaked Blueprint North Carolina memo, look at how the immigration debate might affect next year's elections, and debate whether or not our students need to learn cursive writing in their multiplication tables. So let's get started. It wasn't many years ago that we called ourselves the good road state, but those days are gone. The combination of rapid population growth, inadequate funding, and a funding formula that needs revision has stymied maintenance and new road construction. The primary source for road construction and funding has been the 37.5 cents per gallon of tax that we charge in the state. It's the highest in the southeastern United States, but they say it's not sufficient. Many are calling for new funding options, including taxes based on how many miles you drive, higher vehicle registration fees, toll roads, and other fees. They're also suggesting that we reconsider our formula for how funds are distributed across the state. Question one to Connie. Connie, Republican leaders find themselves in an awkward position. They ran on the promise of not raising taxes, but to properly fund road construction. Many are saying they may just have to do that. What do you think? How do they solve this road funding question we're going to be facing?
I think a lot of what you're going to be seeing is just restructuring within DOT, using design, build more, trying to figure ways to more efficiently build roads that last longer and require less maintenance. So they're going to work from that route. Right now, from the taxation side, they're really looking at the overall tax reform plan with income tax and sales taxes, and that's pretty much taken up the full bandwidth. I have heard from Governor McCrory that he is not interested in tolling I-95, and that's going to take a big chunk of change. But at this point, I'm just hearing a few ideas floating around, but nothing that's really bubbling up to the top.
Chris, I just got back from a vacation in Florida, and I paid a toll on every road, on every turnpike. To go anywhere in Florida, you pay a toll. Now, they have the tourist opportunity down there where people from outside the state are helping to fund it. Toll roads, is that going to happen in North Carolina?
Well, I'm not a big fan, but and it looked like the state was going that direction. We had the Turnpike Authority. We started talking about toll. We have a toll in Wake County on part of the outer loop. There's some other talk about tolls, but I actually think the toll roads have fallen in popularity, among politicians of both parties. I think you're going to see far less move to tolling, but that does raise a dilemma. You said it, and I'm all for efficiencies, and I think there are plenty in DOT. There always have been, no matter who's been governor. The problem is we're talking about billions of dollars that we're short, and I don't think there's billions of dollars of efficiency. We have to find some new revenue. Nobody wants to talk about that. I think in future years, it might not be next year or the year after, we'll see some bonding, I think, another big highway project bond, maybe not the size of the Highway Trust Fund in 1989, but clearly that's going to be part of the mix to build some roads.
John, you've made the statement before that North Carolina's system's a little different, that North Carolina, the state pays for the roads. Municipalities in a lot of states are paying a lot more than they are in the state of North Carolina. Is the formula wrong here?
No, I think North Carolina's approach of having a mostly state system is the right approach. There are plenty of states that have county road systems. Those are usually paid for with property taxes or sales taxes. I would argue that you should pay for roads as much as possible by charging motorists, either a gas tax or a car tax or something that relates to how much people drive. Tolls, of course, do that too, and I think tolls are going to continue to be a significant part of new capacity in North Carolina. Is going to be added in tolls, both lanes on existing interstates and new roadways. Not every toll project makes sense. So some of the original toll projects that were tossed out actually didn't really make sense on the numbers, and they're probably not going to happen, but others will. Of course, tolls don't help you with unlimited access highways. It only helps you with the interstate type highways where you can set up an electronic toll collection and do that. So for the rest of it, you are going to find efficiencies. You are going to have to look at how to spend existing dollars better. I think there's zero appetite for higher taxes on motorists.
Dan, what about this idea that people who use the roads more should pay more? You know, it's been floated that the tax people by the mileage on their cars. Does that have any merit at all?
I think it's something that we're going to see happen a lot more, particularly as the money becomes more and more scarce. I mean, it's the busier highways that are going to require the most maintenance, and it's the motorists on those highways that are putting the potholes in the pavement. I
do think it's worth pointing out, I'm sorry, one thing that gets publicity every so often in an investigative report and then it sort of goes away. The trucking industry in North Carolina, I know they're not going to like to hear this, but heavy trucks cause a lot more damage to the highways than the taxes that they pay. And that I don't think anybody could dispute that. Now, the trucking companies will tell you it'll cost them jobs and so forth. That's a debate at some point we ought to have. I don't believe trucks and trucking companies are paying their freight, so to speak, on our highways for the maintenance problem.
Well, that's commerce, and that's going to be controversial. But, Connie, back to the gas tax, 37.5 cents, one of the highest. We keep hearing that. Politicians love to campaign on that. Can they go any higher than that? I mean, these guys have capped it now, and it doesn't look like they're willing to go any higher with the gas tax, and I hope they don't.
I don't think you'll see this legislature even somewhat contemplating raising it. And like John said, we have more miles that we manage next to Texas than any other state in the country, and those taxes are paying for it. It just costs money.
If the state were to float a bond referendum idea out there for people in the state of North Carolina, would the taxpayers go for that? What do you guys think?
I actually did that highway bond bill back in 1997, and people did support it, but what's very important is that they need to believe that their taxes aren't going to go up because of it.
John, bond referendum?
That's it. If they could argue that there's with existing revenue can cover a bond, they can sell that to the voters. I don't think tied to a tax increase, I don't think it would pass.
All right, coming up next, we're going to tackle the Blueprint North Carolina controversy that hit the state this week. We'll be right back.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
Baseball players from other countries are considered guest workers here. Baseball, the previous administration and Congress cut a deal in 2006 allowing foreign players to travel freely across the country. Not so for agriculture guest workers. They're vilified for doing work Americans won't, and they face a mountain of red tape just to get here. Shouldn't American agriculture get the same consideration as baseball? Farm Bureau and Agriculture, we keep North Carolina growing.
Tired of stop-and-go traffic? Travel by train. It's convenient, safe, and affordable. Visit bytrain.org for more information.
Betty Ray McCain is one of North Carolina's most colorful and enjoyable persons. From her small-town upbringing to her 8 years as Secretary of Cultural Resources, Betty has hundreds of stories about people, places, and events. You are invited to attend a special Carolina Collection event, An Evening with Betty Ray McCain, at the North Carolina Museum of History on Tuesday, March 12th at 5:30 p.m. The evening includes a reception with heavy hors d'oeuvres, followed by an hour-long interview with Betty Ray McCain in the NC Museum of History auditorium. Tickets are $25 and group rates are available. Seating is limited, so make your reservations now. Visit ncspin.com or call 919-832-1416. The presenting sponsor for this Carolina Collection event is Touchstone Energy, and the reception sponsor is the North Carolina Democratic Party. Register now at ncspin.com or 919-832-1416.
We now return to NC Spin.
In the 2012 elections, North Carolina Democrats lost control of both the executive and legislative branches of government for the first time since Reconstruction. So it's easy to understand both their frustration and their desire to recapture control of state government. A group called Blueprint North Carolina, a coalition of more than 50 groups whose mission is to change the public policy debate, circulated a memo listing strategies for Democrats to win. It suggests crippling Republican leaders, eviscerating the leadership, weakening their ability to govern, and find out where they're weak and use that to your advantage. The confidential memo cautioned against wide distribution, which is exactly what happened when the Charlotte Observer obtained a copy and then ended up to all the newspapers across the state and all the other media as well. Question one to Dan. Dan, you're the chairman of the Wake County Democratic Party. Is this a winning strategy for Democrats to regain leadership of the state?
It is a short-term strategy. I don't think it's a winning strategy. I think that North Carolina recognizes that the people in the positions of power, the people that we elect as leaders, need more than the ability to obstruct. They need to have a vision. They need to follow through. It's got to be hung on a set of principles. Simply saying no is not going to work.
You know, the head of Blueprint North Carolina came out after there was some talk about losing funding and started saying, you know, we didn't put that out. Somebody else put that out. I think somebody else put that out. I mean, you buying that, Connie?
Well, I would say that if I were in that mess, but I think there's enough smoking guns that everybody's very suspicious. Yeah. But I think what Dan said, in general, the public's really tired of hearing the viciousness that's occurring and really not even dealing with issues, but just the blame game. They just want to see people governing, they want to see it civil, and they want to see something getting done.
Following public officials, elected officials around with video cameras, Chris, seriously?
Well, this, people have been doing that for a long time. Ask Bobby Etheridge.
But private investigators?
That's ridiculous. And I think the point here is these are not the words that I think most people would choose. I don't think we should be attacking individuals. I think it's perfectly legitimate to attack Governor Corey's position on unemployment or health, Medicaid, or the tax plan or whatever. This ought to be about the issues and what they mean to people in North Carolina. And we ought to have a vigorous debate about it, and that means a hard-fought, a hard-nosed debate, but we don't need to be attacking people personally.
John, some people are now saying, some groups are coming out and saying not only was it unethical, but it's illegal. So have they broken tax laws or any of those kind of things, Blueprint North Carolina?
It's actually a more complicated issue than people might think, because obviously you cannot use 501c3 organizations, as many of these many of the members of Blueprint NC are. You can't use those for partisan political purposes. If you have a meeting and somebody blurts out, you know, I wish the Republicans fail or something, I mean, it's a partisan statement. It's not a violation of tax law. You have to be expending dollars to try to do something partisan. Now, I'm not saying there wasn't a violation. I'm just saying you have to be careful throwing the allegation out there and assuming it'll stick. More generally, I've been in the public policy arena now for many years, operating 501c3s and operating coalitions. And I will tell you that it is almost never a good strategy to go in there thinking what we're going to do is we're going to blow up and destroy and attack personal character. Now, there may be situations, obviously my organization and others, there have been situations where you have a public official who has done something unethical or illegal, and you investigate that, and maybe you write about it or you pass the story along, and I think that's legitimate. But a strategy to destroy people, the spokesman for ideas that you disagree with, is, we all agree it's undecorous and impolite and not nice. It's also ineffective. It's a waste of your time. Yeah. You are better off arguing your case, not trying to destroy the people on the other side. It doesn't work. Okay, so now we've established that it's a bad strategy, but now what do the Democrats do? Let's turn the attention to what the Democrats do to try to get back in the game here. And who's running the show for the Democrats these days? I mean, is Roy Cooper the guy, the Attorney General? I mean, is the new chairman of the Democratic Party? You know, the Democrats on the state level have a little bit of the same problem the Republicans have on the federal level, Dan. Who's running the show? Who's the spokesman? You?
I'm not the spokesman. we have a chairman, a duly elected chairman, who's our spokesperson right now. You know, I think that a lot of people are looking to Kay Hagan. She's the only person who's on the ballot statewide for us in 2014. It's that sort of person, someone who's got skin in the game and has an interest in making sure that this party comes together and moves forward, that's going to be in the position to be a leader. But your bigger question is, what should Democrats do? We should do exactly what Chris just said. There are issues right now being debated, and you can certainly be the loyal opposition, but you've got to do more than just provide a comparison to where we are now. You have to say, this is why this policy is one that I can't support and you shouldn't support either. And here's a better way forward. That's how you regain a leadership position.
That's the question, Connie. Enough with the whining. What's a strategy for the Democrats going forward? I mean, we've been through the inauguration now. We're entering March. The Democrats need a message, don't they?
They do, and there have been a lot of big bills that have been going through that with Medicaid, with the exchange, the state exchange, with UI. They've had a lot of bills that they can have a platform to share their message, which has been important. I think for the Democrat caucus, and I've served in the minority party. I've been in the majority, the minority. I've gone back and forth and back and forth. And what I've found really worked being in the minority is keeping a vision, not taking things personally, and just staying focused on working on the issues and getting back in control.
And one of the other things that you do in that scenario, if you're going to be effective, is you pick your battles and you don't spend all your political capital all the time. I mean, if you do have a press conference every day for the first 4 weeks of the session screaming that the end of the world is coming, people stop listening to you.
Let Chris have the last word. Okay. Chris, you've been named by name by some of these folks saying that you've been too hard and you've attacked them too hard. I mean, what's your final word on this whole thing?
Well, I certainly have attacked the governor's policies hard, and will continue to do that. That's part of my role, and we'll attack the Republican policies hard when they do the wrong thing. I would point out I attacked the Democratic policies hard when they were in control and did things that I didn't agree with. One final point about that, it's been 140 years, whatever it is you mentioned. I think the Democratic Party is still figuring out how to be the party of opposition. This is a position they've never been in before. They're still coming to grips with who's the leader now. There's no obvious person. You mentioned Kay Hagan, which is a good point. I think they still haven't figured it out.
All right, great discussion. Well, if you enjoy keeping up with what's happening in North Carolina, you'll enjoy our website, ncspin.com, and NCSpin on Facebook. All during the week, our panelists and our viewers sound off with their opinions of this week's events. Be sure to be part of the conversation with ncspin.com or NCSpin on Facebook.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
Not all high school graduates go to college. Not all employers need college graduates. Are North Carolina's public schools preparing graduates with the skills employers need now? Join the discussion. Visit nceducate.com.
So let me just lay out what we've learned here. We've looked over all the tests, all the scans, and from everything we're seeing, knowing that nothing can be 100% conclusive, looks like we got it all. There's no visible sign of the tumor, but we're going to keep an eye on it. We'll need to follow up every 2 or 3 months for now. But this is really good news.
We now return to NC Spin.
Well, if you want examples of poor public leadership, look no further than our nation's immigration laws. Washington has refused to delineate a clear policy on immigration, resulting in labor shortages, racial tensions, and other problems. Shortly after the first of the year, a bipartisan group of congressmen and senators announced that they were close to an agreement on immigration reform that would tighten border security and create a pathway for citizenship for many illegally in this country. Question one to Chris. Chris, President Obama won re-election in part because he promised Latinos he would force immigration reform, and he captured the overwhelming majority of the Hispanic vote. Senator Kay Hagan is up for re-election next year, and she may find herself in a difficult position, I think, deciding whether to support the president or alienating many moderate and conservative North Carolinians. How big a problem is this going to be for Senator Hagan next year?
Well, I actually don't think she may have some problems. I don't know. I don't think immigration will necessarily be one of them. I think the Republicans, when you have Lindsey Graham and John McCain leaving a meeting from the White House saying that they made really good progress talking about immigration reform with the President of the United States, I think there's clearly a message from the voters. The Republicans believe they need to do much better courting the Latino vote and be more open-minded about immigration. President Obama has talked about it. I think this will be one of those issues that maybe the hard right base of the Republican Party will be upset. But I don't believe that most people in North Carolina or around the country will be furious about what happens, because I think what will happen, it will largely be bipartisan. I think the country is coming around that we have to figure out some sensible solution. I would point out, we have fewer undocumented immigrants in the United States now than we did 4 years ago. Some of that's due to the economy. President Obama has also deported more people than the last president. Whether you think that's a good thing or not, it's true. There's a lot of issues at play here. I don't think this is nearly as a divisive issue as it was.
John, the latest plan, and we've heard so many, they haven't done anything much, but they keep talking about plans. The latest plan is to tighten border security again, which is what they're saying, but allow guest workers back into the country to work. Is that going to happen? And while you're talking about that, let's also get into the discussion about what's going on in North Carolina right now. Farm Bureau just had a press conference talking about the fact that the farmers in North Carolina need these guest workers because a lot of people won't work in the field for $10.75 an hour, but the Latinos will.
The basis for the deal is border security, but also some kind of verification. Remember that something like half of illegal immigration occurs from people overstaying visas, not slipping into the country, but coming in legally and then not leaving when they're supposed to. So border security is not sufficient. But the basis of the deal is something on security to enforce the law, plus guest work, additional opportunities for people to immigrate legally to work as guests. Where the deal may go awry is for people who are already here illegally, do they get some kind of legal status, period, or do they get a fairly quick pathway to citizenship? I think that latter part is the hard sell for Republicans and for independents. Some kind of legal status is not.
Dan, the legislature is now talking about some immigration reform here. They're tired of waiting on the feds. I mean, is that going to be a collision course?
Absolutely. I mean, you can already see that train wreck happening. I think that the feds are going to have a much more bipartisan approach right now for the reasons that Chris has already described. What I think you're going to see in North Carolina is much more of a reaction to what people think North Carolinians want. But it's really a complex issue. People are not looking for a quick fix.
What do people want in North Carolina, Connie? You're in the legislature. You're out there talking to people. They want something like we saw in Arizona, something like Georgia. What do you think people in North Carolina want to do about illegal immigration?
There's definitely a split there, and I agree with John that it's not one of those issues that's divisive for the more moderate voter that's out there. And the House had a House Select Committee on Immigration Reform that really came up with no policy because I don't think they could not figure out what to do. And so what they basically done is more punt to the federal level. So you may see some things where there's little bills popping around that nibble at the sides of it, maybe on driver's license or whatever. But to see a major reform bill coming out of the General Assembly, you're not going to see it because they don't have the answer.
Very quickly, are we going to see any legitimate reform at the federal level this year? Let's go around the horn and see what people think. Chris?
I think we will see some reform. It may not go as far as maybe I think it should, but I think we will see something.
Dan?
Yes, they're working on it right now.
John?
Some in the next 2 years, definitely, I think so.
And Connie?
And I believe the Republican congressmen and women really do want to see a resolution there so they can move on.
So you're telling me they're going to agree on something in Washington? Okay,
yes.
We'll see. All right. Coming back, we're going to talk about kids writing and multiplying tables right after this.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
Be sure to reserve your seat for an evening with Betty Ray McCain. Tuesday, March 12th at the NC Museum of History. Tickets are $25 and can be purchased at ncspin.com or 919-832-1416.
We now return to NC Spin.
Today's students grow up with smartphones, laptops, and devices through which they can search the internet, write papers, and use calculators to do homework now. This technology has all but eliminated the need to write cursive and memorize multiplication and division tables. But a Back to Basics bill filed in the legislature would require students demonstrate competency in both. Question one to John Hood, who has a lovely cursive.
Yes, I do.
There was a day when penmanship was required to be part of the student curriculum. You and I grew up with it, John. Have we come to a time now when it's obsolete? We don't need these kids to learn how to do cursive and multiplication tables?
When it comes to cursive, I do not think the handwriting is on the wall. I think that you still need the ability to write. I'm not sure we need to mandate with a statute this, but I do think a policy of encouraging students to learn how to write cursive is entirely appropriate. My children, who certainly text and they use computers all the time, but they have learned in their school to write cursive handwriting. I think that is entirely appropriate. Now, this is not the same as having kids copy out entire pages of the Quran or the Bible in script. I mean, we're not talking about wasting students' time. We're talking about learning how to manipulate a pen or a pencil if you don't, for example, have a smartphone or a computer handy, and I think it's entirely reasonable.
It's interesting. Now you've got these forms that you fill out online. Mm-hmm. You don't. I mean, in your daily life, you don't find yourself. I thought about this. You don't find yourself writing cursive. The only thing I ever do in cursive anymore is my signature. Dan, I mean, is it an obsolete art? Or
I don't want to call it obsolete, but you're absolutely right. You're more likely to carefully block print or quickly scribble something in a mix of cursive and block print. I don't think it's something that should be legislated.
It's just the sense is, I think, Connie, it's just something that kids ought to know, and grow up. But a lot of people say, well, the reason people feel that way is because they did it growing up, but in their world, going forward, they're not going to need to do it.
Well, I think the reason why the legislation has popped up by Representative Pat Hurley is because the core curriculum that the state's looking at adopting basically has done away with that requirement. And she's saying, hey, I think that's important. I think we need to have that option out there for the children. And so that's why she's pushing that direction.
You know, they stopped teaching spelling a few years back, Chris, and kids can't spell. I can tell you, I'll call her out. My daughter lives in South Carolina. I hope she won't see this, but she can't spell. And I'm telling you, if they don't learn these basic things in school, I'm telling you, they need to get it now, right? Or they'll never have an opportunity.
Right. I don't think there's anything wrong with learning these basic things, but I do think it's weird to have, with all due respect, Representative Hurley, for legislators to be introducing specific parts of the curriculum to try to force the school system to do it. We always talk about local control and this and that. And I think to start it, are we going to say they need a number 2 pencil?
But now, keep in mind, this is not local control. This is a state has imposed a new national curriculum.
I understand that, but this
that
is
has taken this off the table.
All legislators now saying, no, we're going to do
saying
this.
The national curriculum is flawed in this area.
Right. Is this a feel-good bill, Dan, or is it really going to pass?
It'll be an interesting debate. I don't see it going anywhere. I do think the multiplication tables part is relevant, but again, I think it's a local control
I wouldn't mind seeing some of the legislators go through their multiplication tables.
That would be interesting.
How about just
well, folks, you've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback and read Tom's weekly column. Visit the website ncspin.com or catch NC Spin on Facebook. We hope you'll join us next week. Tom will be back. NC Spin will take on more issues of interest to the people of North Carolina. Until then, stay informed and, of course, watch out for the spin.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.